There is something strangely powerful about a man who is not afraid to walk away. Not because he threatens to leave. Not because he plays emotional games. But because deep down, he knows something most people struggle to accept: his presence is a choice, not an obligation. At first, this kind of man may seem calm, even ordinary. He listens, he speaks with quiet confidence, and he never tries too hard to hold someone's attention. But the longer you observe him, the more you begin to notice something different. He doesn't chase. And that simple fact changes everything. Because the moment a woman realizes that this man can truly leave if the connection loses its balance, his attention suddenly becomes far more valuable. Sometimes, the most attractive man in the room is the one who knows he can walk away. Welcome to the Stoic Love Wisdom channel. This is where we share lessons about love, real-life experiences and tips for building strong relationships. In today's video, I will share with you the dangerous attraction of a man who can leave. These may be things you have never thought of. If you are looking for a deeper understanding of love and how to develop relationships, don't miss this video. Before watching the video, find a quiet space and put on your headphones to feel every word I am about to share. Relax and enjoy this journey with me. Are you ready to start this journey? Let's begin. Part 1. The man who is not afraid to leave. There is a type of man most people do not understand at first. He is not the loudest in the room. He does not beg for attention. He does not chase endlessly or try to convince people to stay. And yet, strangely, he often becomes the most intriguing presence in a woman's life. Not because he tries to be mysterious, but because he possesses something rare in modern relationships: the ability to walk away. This is what many people call the dangerous attraction of a man who can leave. It is not dangerous because he intends to hurt anyone. It is dangerous because he cannot be controlled through attention, validation, or emotional games. And when people sense that kind of independence, it changes how they see you. But to understand why this kind of man becomes so magnetic, you must first understand a quiet truth about human nature. People often value what they feel they might lose. Not because they are selfish, but because certainty makes the mind comfortable, while uncertainty makes it alert. Think about it. When someone's presence feels guaranteed, their value slowly fades into the background of daily life. Their messages, their effort, their attention, it all becomes normal. Expected. Almost automatic. But the moment that certainty disappears, the mind begins to notice what it once ignored. And this is where the quiet power of a man who can leave begins to appear. Because a man who is capable of leaving carries a different kind of energy. He is present, but not dependent. He cares, but he does not cling. He enjoys connection, but he does not sacrifice his self-respect to maintain it. This balance creates something unusual. Calm strength. And calm strength is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess. Not the loud strength of dominance or control, but the quiet strength of someone who knows he will be perfectly fine with or without your approval. Most people are not used to encountering this kind of man. In fact, many relationships operate on the opposite dynamic. One person becomes emotionally invested earlier. They begin chasing reassurance. They over-explain. They send the extra message. They try to keep the connection alive at all costs. And when someone behaves this way, something subtle happens to the balance of attraction. The more they chase, the less valuable their attention appears. Not because their feelings are wrong, but because effort without boundaries slowly erodes perceived value. When someone knows you will never leave, they stop fearing the possibility of losing you. And without the possibility of loss, appreciation often fades. But the man who understands his worth lives differently. He does not threaten to leave. He does not create dramatic ultimatums. He simply lives with a quiet internal rule. My presence is offered, not guaranteed. This mindset changes the entire energy of how he moves through relationships. He shows interest when it is genuine. He gives attention when it is appreciated. He invests time where there is reciprocity. But the moment respect disappears or effort becomes one-sided, he does something many people struggle to do. He steps back. Not out of anger. Not out of wounded pride. But out of clarity. And clarity can feel dangerous to people who are used to emotional certainty. Because when someone realizes that your presence depends on mutual respect rather than endless patience, they begin to see you differently. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer someone whose attention they can casually assume. Instead, you become something rarer. A man who chooses where his energy goes. And choice creates value. You see, the modern world has created a strange contradiction. People constantly talk about wanting strong, confident partners. But when they encounter someone who truly possesses emotional independence, it can feel unsettling. Because independence cannot be easily manipulated. You cannot guilt it into staying. You cannot control it through silence or emotional distance. You cannot test it endlessly to see how much it will tolerate. A man who can walk away simply observes the situation, and decides whether it deserves his presence. And that decision-making ability changes the entire psychological dynamic. At first, a woman may not consciously notice it. She may simply feel something different about him. He listens calmly. He speaks without trying to impress. He does not rush to fill every silence. He does not panic when conversations slow down. He does not chase attention. And because of that, his attention begins to feel more intentional. More valuable. More selective. When he shows interest, it feels meaningful. When he invests effort, it feels earned. And when he steps back, it carries weight. This is where the word dangerous begins to make sense. Because most people are used to dynamics where emotional availability can be taken for granted. But a man who can leave does not operate that way. His presence is connected to respect. His attention is connected to balance. And his time is connected to mutual effort. If those things disappear, he does not argue for them. He simply removes himself. And that quiet ability creates a powerful psychological effect. Because the human mind often becomes more attentive when something feels uncertain. If a woman senses that a man's presence depends on the quality of the connection rather than her ability to hold his attention effortlessly, she begins to invest more awareness. She listens more closely. She notices his reactions. She becomes more mindful of the dynamic between them. Not because she is afraid of him, but because she senses that he values himself. And people naturally respect those who respect themselves. This is why the most quietly attractive men are rarely the ones chasing validation. They are the ones who are perfectly comfortable walking their own path. They do not need to dominate the room. They do not need constant reassurance. They simply know that their time, energy, and attention are limited resources. And they choose carefully where to place them. To some people, this kind of man may seem distant. To others, he appears calm and grounded. But to the people who truly understand emotional dynamics, he represents something incredibly rare. A man who does not stay where he is not valued. And that quality alone can change the entire emotional atmosphere of a relationship. Because when someone realizes that you are capable of leaving, your presence becomes more meaningful. Not because you threaten to go, but because your presence is clearly a choice. And when presence becomes a choice rather than an obligation, attraction begins to deepen in a way most people cannot easily explain. But this is only the beginning of the story. Because the true psychological effect of a man who can walk away does not appear immediately. It unfolds slowly, as people begin to sense the quiet power behind his calm behavior. Love, like a mirror that reflects ourselves. When you learn to love, you are also learning to look back at yourself. What are your strengths? What are the wounds that need to be healed? And understanding yourself will help you understand the other person more deeply. That is also the reason I share on this channel, to help you see love as a journey to nurture your soul. If you find these things meaningful, click like to spread that value. And if this is your first time coming to the channel, don't forget to click subscribe with the notification bell, so we can always accompany each other in the next lessons. Leave a comment below, share your true feelings after listening to this part. Who knows, your little story may touch the heart of someone in need. Now, let's continue on the next part of this journey. Part 2, the moment she realizes she cannot control you. There is something subtle that happens when a woman begins to understand that a man cannot be emotionally controlled. At first, she may not notice it clearly. She only feels that something about you is different from most men she has encountered before. You do not react the way others do. You do not rush to fix every silence. You do not become anxious when she takes longer to reply. And perhaps most importantly, you do not behave like someone who is afraid of losing her. Now, to understand why this creates such a powerful psychological effect, you must understand a quiet truth about human behavior. Many emotional dynamics are built on invisible expectations. When two people begin interacting, both sides slowly learn how much influence they have over each other. If a woman delays her replies and the man immediately sends another message, she learns something about him. If she becomes distant and he tries even harder to keep her attention, she learns something else. These small interactions slowly build a map inside her mind. A map that tells her how predictable your reactions are. But when a man possesses the ability to walk away, that map becomes impossible to complete. Because your reactions are not driven by fear. They are driven by self-respect. If the conversation flows naturally, you enjoy it. If the connection feels balanced, you invest in it. But if the energy becomes one-sided, you do not chase it. You simply step back. And that single behavior disrupts something many people unconsciously rely on. Predictability. You see, emotional control often depends on predictability. If someone knows exactly how you will react, they can influence the dynamic. They can test your patience. They can pull away to see if you will chase. They can become inconsistent to measure how much effort you will tolerate. But when a man is emotionally grounded, those tests lose their power. Not because he is playing a game, but because he refuses to participate in unhealthy dynamics. And this is where the attraction becomes complicated. Because at first, a woman may try to interpret your calmness in different ways. Maybe you are shy. Maybe you are distracted. Maybe you simply need time to open up. But as the interaction continues, she begins to notice something deeper. You are not anxious. You are not trying to impress. And you are not trying to secure her approval. You simply exist as yourself. And strangely, that creates a quiet tension. Because most people are used to interactions where attention flows toward them easily. Especially in modern dating environments where validation can be obtained quickly. But when someone does not immediately offer that validation, curiosity begins to grow. Not because you are withholding it intentionally. But because you only give attention when it feels genuine. And authenticity always carries more weight than desperation. Now imagine how this begins to shape her perception of you. When she shares something personal, you listen carefully. But you do not overreact. When she becomes distant, you give space. But you do not chase. When she reconnects, you welcome the conversation. But you do not behave like someone who was waiting desperately. These small behaviors create a powerful message. You enjoy her presence. But you do not depend on it. And this difference is where the attraction begins to deepen. Because when a woman realizes that your attention cannot be easily controlled, she begins to view the connection differently. Your interest becomes more meaningful. Your approval becomes more valuable. Your presence becomes more intentional. And intention always feels more significant than habit. This is why the ability to leave creates such a strong emotional signal. It communicates that your attention is not automatic. It is chosen. Chosen every time you engage. Chosen every time you invest effort. Chosen every time you remain present in the connection. And when something is chosen rather than guaranteed, people treat it differently. They become more aware of it. They begin paying closer attention. They become more careful with how they interact. Because now the dynamic contains something rare. Consequences. If the connection remains respectful and balanced, it grows. If it becomes careless or dismissive, it fades. And that quiet structure changes the emotional environment entirely. Suddenly, the relationship is not built on one person chasing the other. It is built on mutual presence. Mutual respect. Mutual effort. But here is where the situation becomes even more interesting. Because the moment a woman truly understands that you can leave, something unexpected often happens. She begins investing more energy into the connection herself. Not because you demanded it. Not because you forced it. But because people naturally value things that require effort to maintain. When someone knows you will always stay no matter how they behave, their effort tends to decrease. But when someone senses that your presence depends on the quality of the relationship, their awareness increases. They listen more closely. They respond more thoughtfully. They begin contributing more emotional energy. And suddenly, the connection feels different. Balanced. Alive. More authentic. This is the paradox many men never understand. The ability to leave does not destroy attraction. It often strengthens it. Not because walking away is powerful by itself. But because the mindset behind it creates emotional balance. You are not trying to keep someone. You are simply choosing to share your life with someone who also chooses you. And that difference transforms the entire dynamic. Because now the connection is no longer built on fear of loss. It is built on mutual desire. And desire always feels more alive than obligation. But even with all of this, the full impact of a man who can leave has not yet appeared. Because the most powerful moment comes when the possibility of losing him stops being theoretical. And starts feeling real. That is the moment when attraction becomes something deeper than curiosity. Part 3. When the possibility of losing him becomes real. At the beginning, the idea that you might leave is only a possibility. Something abstract. Something she may notice quietly in your behavior, but not something she truly believes will happen. After all, many people talk about independence. Many people claim they respect themselves. But when the emotional tension rises, they stay. They chase. They explain themselves. They try to repair the connection even when the balance is clearly broken. So at first, a woman may place you in the same category as everyone else. Calm, maybe. Interesting, perhaps. But still predictable. Still someone who will remain no matter how the dynamic shifts. And this is where the real test of a man's character begins. Because eventually, every connection faces moments where the balance is challenged. There will be times when communication slows. Times when interest feels uneven. Times when effort becomes one-sided. In these moments, most people reveal their emotional habits. Some react with anxiety. Some try to force closeness. Some begin over-explaining their feelings, hoping the other person will respond with reassurance. But the man who truly understands his worth does something different. He observes. He pays attention to the dynamic without immediately trying to control it. And if the imbalance continues long enough, he does something simple that carries enormous psychological weight. He stops investing where there is no return. Not dramatically. Not with accusations. But quietly. His messages become less frequent. His energy becomes more focused elsewhere. His presence slowly withdraws from the dynamic that no longer feels mutual. And this is the moment when the possibility of losing him stops being theoretical. Now it becomes visible. At first, the change may feel subtle. She might notice that you no longer initiate every conversation. That you are no longer rushing to respond. That the emotional energy you once offered freely is now more reserved. But because the shift happens calmly, without drama, it creates a strange emotional tension. You are not angry. You are not punishing her. You are simply less available. And that quiet distance begins to send a message. A message that says, my attention is not endless. For some people, this realization arrives slowly. At first, they assume the change is temporary. Maybe you are busy. Maybe you are distracted. Maybe life simply pulled your attention elsewhere. But as time passes, something begins to feel different. Because your energy has not returned to the way it was before. And this is when awareness begins to grow. The awareness that the connection may actually be slipping away. This realization can create a surprising emotional response. Not always sadness. Not always longing. Often, pride. Because when someone realizes they might lose the attention of a person who once invested deeply, it can challenge their sense of certainty. They begin asking quiet questions. Why is he pulling back? Did something change? Did I misread how much he cared? But beneath those questions lies something deeper. A shift in perception. Because now, for the first time, she begins to see your independence not as a personality trait, but as a real possibility. The possibility that you may walk away without pleading, without arguments, without emotional drama. And that possibility can feel unsettling. Not because she wants to control you, but because people naturally feel more secure when they believe someone's attention is stable, predictable, guaranteed. But the man who can leave quietly removes that guarantee. His presence becomes conditional on respect. Conditional on balance. Conditional on mutual effort. And that condition changes everything. Because when someone realizes that a relationship depends on their participation rather than your endless patience, their awareness increases. They start paying attention to the connection in a new way. Suddenly, your calmness feels more meaningful. Your distance feels more noticeable. Your silence carries more weight. This is where the psychology of attraction becomes fascinating. Because the moment someone senses they might lose something valuable, their mind begins measuring its importance more carefully. Things that once felt ordinary begin to feel significant. Your conversations. Your presence. Your energy. The stability you brought into the dynamic. All of these things become more visible in your absence. And this is why the ability to leave is so powerful. Not because leaving itself is impressive, but because it reveals the truth of your standards. A man who stays no matter how he is treated communicates something very different from a man who calmly steps away when the connection loses its balance. One says, I will remain here regardless of how I am valued. The other says, my presence depends on mutual respect. And people instinctively recognize the difference, even if they cannot fully explain it. Now imagine what begins to happen inside her mind as this realization grows. She begins replaying the dynamic between you. Moments that once felt small start carrying new meaning. The times you listened patiently. The times you invested effort. The way you showed interest without demanding attention. And slowly, she begins to see the connection from a different angle. Not as something she simply experienced, but as something you actively contributed to. Your presence created emotional value. And now that presence feels uncertain. This is the moment when attraction begins to deepen in a new way. Not the playful curiosity of the beginning, but a more serious awareness. The awareness that the man in front of her is not someone she can casually take for granted, because he is fully capable of continuing his life without her. And strangely enough, that independence often makes his presence more desirable. Not because people enjoy the idea of losing someone, but because independence creates respect. And respect is one of the strongest foundations of attraction. But the story does not end here. Because the real turning point arrives when the emotional distance grows large enough that she must confront a question many people try to avoid. What if he actually leaves? Not as a possibility, but as reality. And when that moment arrives, the dynamic between you changes in ways most men never expect. There are things in love, only when we take a step back, sit down quietly, can we truly understand. I share these stories not to teach you how to love, but so that you can find the answers for yourself. If what you just heard touches your heart, please click like as a way to spread this positive energy to more people. And remember to click subscribe, because there are many profound perspectives on love waiting for you in the next videos. Now, let's continue the remaining journey together, because the most precious things are sometimes at the end. Part 4, when your distance awakens her attention. There is a moment in every emotional dynamic when distance stops being subtle, and becomes impossible to ignore. Up until now, your change in behavior may have felt like a quiet shift. Less effort. Less chasing. Less emotional availability. But eventually, distance creates a space large enough that the other person must finally notice it. And when that moment arrives, something interesting begins to happen inside the human mind. Attention awakens. Because attention is often strongest when something familiar begins to disappear. Think about how people behave in everyday life. When something is always present, they stop noticing it. The familiar becomes invisible. But when something starts to fade, suddenly it becomes visible again. And this is exactly what happens when a man who once gave his presence freely begins to withdraw it calmly. At first, she may simply feel that the connection has become quieter. The conversations are shorter. The energy is different. The warmth that once flowed naturally now feels more restrained. But the most unsettling part is not the silence. It is the absence of effort. You are no longer trying to pull the connection forward. You are no longer filling the empty spaces. You are no longer compensating for the imbalance. Instead, you are simply still. And stillness can feel surprisingly powerful. Because when one person stops chasing the dynamic, the other person suddenly becomes aware of how much movement they were responsible for all along. For a long time, you may have been the one initiating conversations. The one bringing emotional energy into the interaction. The one maintaining momentum. But now that effort is gone. And when that effort disappears, the structure of the connection changes. Suddenly, the responsibility for maintaining the relationship becomes shared. Or perhaps, it becomes hers. This shift can feel unfamiliar. Because many people grow comfortable in dynamics where they receive attention more often than they give it. Not intentionally, but simply because the other person offered that attention so consistently. But once that consistency disappears, something begins to happen. She starts noticing your absence. She might open your messages expecting to see something new. But there is nothing. She might scroll through old conversations, remembering the tone of your interactions. The way you once engaged with curiosity and warmth. And this reflection can create a quiet emotional tension. Because now she begins to see something she did not see clearly before. Your effort. When effort is present every day, it becomes normal. But when effort disappears, it becomes visible. Suddenly, she realizes how often you initiated conversations. How often you carried the emotional energy of the interaction. How often you were the one making the connection feel alive. And that realization can feel surprising. Because most people do not consciously measure these things while they are happening. They only recognize them when they are gone. This is why distance can awaken attention in ways that constant presence never could. Because distance creates contrast. It reveals what was once hidden in routine. Now imagine the psychological effect this begins to create. She may start wondering where your attention has gone. What you are doing. Who you are talking to. Whether your emotional energy has simply moved elsewhere. Not necessarily because she feels possessive. But because uncertainty naturally captures the mind. And uncertainty is something your calm distance has quietly introduced into the dynamic. Before, everything felt predictable. You were there. You cared. You showed it regularly. Now that certainty has disappeared. And when certainty disappears, curiosity grows. But curiosity is only the first stage. Soon, curiosity becomes awareness. Awareness that the man she once experienced as consistent and available is now living his life without chasing her attention. And this awareness can trigger something deeper. Respect. Because independence communicates strength. Not loud strength. Not aggressive strength. But quiet emotional stability. The ability to continue moving forward without clinging to a connection that no longer feels balanced. And people naturally respect those who can maintain their composure in moments where others would become desperate. This is where the dynamic begins to reverse. The same calmness that once made you appear relaxed now begins to make you appear valuable. Because your attention is no longer automatic. It is selective. Your presence is no longer guaranteed. It is intentional. And intention always carries more weight than habit. Now she may begin paying closer attention to you again. Listening more carefully when you speak. Noticing your behavior. Observing the space you have created. Because the absence of your pursuit has forced her to reconsider the dynamic between you. And when someone begins reconsidering a connection, something important is happening. They are reevaluating your value in their life. Not because you demanded it. But because your behavior created the space for it. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of attraction. Many people believe attraction grows through constant effort. Through endless communication. Through proving your interest again and again. But in reality, attraction often grows stronger in moments of space. Space allows people to reflect. To notice. To miss what was once present. Without that space, everything blends into routine. But with space, every detail becomes clearer. And the man who can create that space calmly, without bitterness or emotional drama, often becomes more intriguing than the man who constantly tries to hold the connection together. Because calm distance communicates something powerful. Self-respect. And self-respect is magnetic. Not because it demands admiration. But because it demonstrates inner stability. You are not reacting out of fear. You are not trying to force the connection. You are simply allowing the dynamic to reveal itself. And that kind of patience carries weight. But there is still one final stage in this story. Because awareness and curiosity are only the beginning. Eventually, the emotional tension created by your distance reaches a point where a decision must be made. Either the connection fades completely. Or the other person steps forward to close the distance. And that moment, the moment when she decides whether to move toward you or let you walk away, is where the true meaning of your independence finally becomes clear. Part 5. The quiet power of the man who walks away. There is a final moment in this entire dynamic that reveals everything. A moment when the space you created becomes too real to ignore. By now, the distance between you is no longer subtle. It is clear. The energy that once flowed easily is now quiet. The conversations that once depended on your effort no longer exist in the same way. And in that silence, something important becomes visible. Your life continues. You are not chasing. You are not trying to repair the connection. You are not sending messages to pull her attention back. You simply move forward. And strangely enough, this is the moment when many women finally begin to see the full meaning of your independence. Because until now, your ability to walk away may have seemed like an idea. A personality trait. Something she noticed in your calm behavior. But now it has become reality. The connection no longer revolves around her ability to hold your attention. Your energy has shifted elsewhere. Your focus has returned to your own path. And that realization can feel powerful. Not because it creates fear, but because it reveals something many people are not used to experiencing. A man who truly values himself. You see, many men talk about self-respect. But when the emotional pressure appears, they abandon it. They chase harder. They explain themselves repeatedly. They try to convince the other person to care. But the man who understands his own worth does something far simpler. He accepts what the situation reveals. If the connection grows naturally, he remains present. If the connection becomes one-sided, he allows it to fade. This acceptance is what makes him different. Because acceptance removes desperation. And desperation is the fastest way to destroy attraction. When someone feels that you need their attention, your presence loses weight. But when someone sees that your life continues peacefully without their validation, your presence gains significance. And this is where the phrase, dangerous attraction, truly begins to make sense. It is dangerous not because the man intends to manipulate anyone. It is dangerous because he cannot be controlled by the fear of losing someone. He understands that connections should exist because two people want them. Not because one person is afraid to walk away. And this understanding creates emotional freedom. Freedom from chasing approval. Freedom from tolerating disrespect. Freedom from staying in dynamics that slowly drain your dignity. And when a man carries this kind of freedom, people feel it. It appears in the way he speaks. The way he listens. The way he handles distance. And most importantly, the way he remains calm when things do not go his way. This calmness is rare. In a world where many relationships are driven by insecurity and emotional reactions, the man who can quietly step back without anger or resentment becomes incredibly noticeable. Because his actions communicate something powerful without words. He is not trying to prove his worth. He already knows it. Now, sometimes this realization causes the other person to step forward. The distance you created awakens awareness. She may begin to see the connection differently. She may notice the stability you once brought into her life. The patience. The presence. The quiet consistency. And sometimes, this awareness leads to renewed effort. Not because you demanded it. But because your absence revealed the value of your presence. But other times, the connection simply fades. And that outcome is equally important. Because a man who truly understands his value does not measure success by whether someone stays. He measures success by whether he remained true to his standards. Did he respect himself? Did he maintain his dignity? Did he refuse to chase attention that was not freely given? If the answer is yes, then he has already won. Because the greatest transformation in this story does not happen inside the woman. It happens inside the man. The man who once believed he needed to prove his worth slowly becomes someone who simply lives it. He no longer feels the urge to convince people to appreciate him. He no longer chases connections that feel uncertain. Instead, he allows relationships to form naturally with those who recognize his value. And this shift changes everything. Because once a man reaches this level of emotional clarity, his presence carries a quiet gravity. He is no longer seeking validation. He is offering companionship. He is no longer trying to secure someone's attention. He is sharing his time with those who choose him willingly. And that difference is what creates the true attraction of a man who can leave. Not arrogance. Not emotional distance. But self-respect. The understanding that love, attention, and connection should never require someone to abandon their dignity. And when a man lives by that principle, something interesting happens. He becomes calmer. Stronger. More grounded. And whether people realize it consciously or not, they begin to respect him for it. Because deep down, everyone understands the quiet power of a person who can walk away from what does not value them. And that power is not loud. It does not demand attention. It simply exists in the calm confidence of a man who knows that his presence is a privilege, not an obligation. That is the true meaning of the dangerous attraction of a man who can leave. Conclusion. In the end, the dangerous attraction of a man who can leave has nothing to do with arrogance, games, or emotional coldness. It comes from something much quieter and far more powerful, self-respect. A man who can walk away does not do so to punish someone or to create drama. He simply understands that his time, attention, and emotional energy are valuable. And because of that, he refuses to stay in places where those things are taken for granted. This mindset changes everything. His presence becomes intentional, not automatic. His attention becomes meaningful, not endless. And the connection he offers becomes something that must be shared, not something that can be assumed. Ironically, this quiet independence is what makes him so magnetic. When a man is no longer afraid of losing someone, he stops trying to control the outcome. He becomes calmer, more grounded, and more authentic in the way he moves through relationships. And whether someone chooses to stay or walk away no longer defines his worth. Because the real strength of a man who can leave is not in the act of leaving itself, but in the understanding that his dignity, peace, and self-respect will always matter more than chasing a connection that does not value him. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. I hope you have found useful lessons about love and relationships. If you find this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. I really appreciate your support and will continue to bring valuable content in the next videos. Please continue to accompany me on my journey to learn about love and relationships. See you again and wish you happiness.